every danger that might befall him.
Oswald wasn't crowned yet, nor was he married. I say you have some work yet to do.
The year 313 of the Third Era, when he fell from his horse and could not be saved by the finest Imperial healers, leaving Morohatha to take the throne. However, she was assassinated, likely by the plotting of a disenfranchised Elder Council member. These events happen in the real timeline, but regardless, when Morohatha's nephew, Pelagius IV, becomes the new emperor, he would further his aunt's work. Then his son Uriel VII succeeded him. He had the diligence of his grand-aunt Morohatha, the political skill of his grand-uncle Uriel VI, and the military prowess of his great-grandfather Uriel V. The big difference in this alternate timeline occurs during events of the main series Elder Scrolls games. It is likely the events of Elder Scrolls Arena play out similarly, with the Imperial Simulacrum occurring, a period where Uriel is betrayed by Jagar Tharn, who uses illusion magic to rule the Empire as Emperor. The Eternal Champion would have a little more trouble navigating Morrowind and Somerset, but the timeline could look very similar. The Staff of Chaos could still be stolen by Draven Induril at the behest of Jagar Tharn, but no seduction of Baron Zaya. However, when we get to the events of Daggerfall, we run into a lot of difficulty. You see, the result of the Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall is that the warp in the west occurs, a big dragon breath, also called the Miracle of Peace, which turns many of the feuding kingdoms of High Rock into only a few, creating a more centralized and stable region. However, this requires the Numidium, which in this alternate timeline was never used by Tiber Septim and is still in the possession of Morrowind, so the warp in the west would never happen. Then, of course, the events of Elder Scrolls III Morrowind would never happen because Dagoth never woke up and the Nerevarine prophecy would never be fulfilled, the Heart of Lorkhan not have been destroyed, which has many implications for the Fourth Era. Regardless of that, the events of Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion could mostly run the same. Uriel VII is assassinated by the Mythic Dawn, headed by the illegitimate son of Haemon Cameron, who could still be currently the king of Valenwood. This illegitimate son, Mankar Cameron, orchestrates the Oblivion Crisis with Mehrunes Dagon, but is thwarted by Martin Septim with the help of the hero of Kvatch. However, Martin Septim sacrifices himself to protect Tamriel, and the Septim line ends. The effects of the Oblivion Crisis would vary a little bit in this alternate timeline. Blackmarsh would still succeed and fare well with the help of the Hist. Morrowind would have the assistance of the three tribunal gods to fight against the Daedric invasion, only proving their glory and worth more. The Crystal Tower would likely still be destroyed by the Daedra, but remember, the Thalmor are already in control here. They could still take credit for ending the crisis, especially because they don't have to deal with any Imperial-influenced Ultima, as they were not part of the Empire. As we enter the Fourth Era, things differ quite a bit. Because the tribunal god Vivek never disappears, he is able to maintain the giant rock Bar Dao, preventing it from crashing into Vardenfell, which causes the eruption of Red Mountain. If Red Mountain never erupts, then Morrowind is never devastated, which means no Dunmer refugees, which means no Grey Quarter, and Solstheim is never
Right. No need to remind me how far I fell short.
Watch your back. Rued's clan may still be nearby.
Theobald, just ahead.
Wood smoke and ash. Rued's men have been here. Eat, my child.
So no times to waste what the Lord has given us.
What about you?
Everything is gone, Reed. Everything.
Ah, my friend.
And we will rebuild, I promise you. You have a will of iron coming here, knowing your kind did all this.
Rued's clan is your enemy, not me. I come on behalf of the late Oswald of Ilmenham.
We're still a dying from top to two. It's your meddling that led to Oswald's death, leaving our kingdom for the worse.
Oswald was a friend and an ally, Reeve. He fought beside me.
To the Dunmer. Additionally, the Argonian invasion would be nowhere near as successful, and it is likely that House Dress and House Telvanni remain mostly undamaged. Potentate Cato of the Empire may still be assassinated, resulting in the Stormcrown Interregnum. Titus Mede conquers the Imperial City and proclaims himself Emperor, beginning the Mede Dynasty. The Old Merry Dominion back a coup in Valenwood, which could depose the Cameron Dynasty, especially since the Empire is weakened after the crisis and may not be able to support them. Valenwood joins the Old Merry Dominion and all contact is severed with the Empire, just the same as the real timeline. The Void Knights still occur, and the Thalmor claim that they restore the moons, and the Elsewhere Confederacy splits into two kingdoms, Anaquina and Palatine, both of which join the Old Merry Dominion. Most events can play out the same from here, but the biggest difference to the landscape of 4th Era Tamriel is that Morrowind remains powerful and stable, and Dunmer refugees never spread all over. You also have to consider that without the Empire ruling Morrowind for centuries, there is never a period for it to become more imperialized, or more cosmopolitan. Take the xenophobia of the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind and consider that it was like that with imperial influence. Likely without it, the Dunmer remain far more xenophobic and zealous. Another thing to consider in this alternate timeline where Dagoth never wakes is that Somerset was never conquered by the Third Empire, which means the Old Merry Dominion and the Thalmor have ruled unbroken for a long time, potentially allowing for more organization and long-term strategy to be implemented. The Thalmor don't really have to deal with any dissidents because they've had centuries to root them out and unify the culture. Because of this, I'd wager their success during the Great War of Year 171 might be much better. You have to consider that in the real timeline, the Empire only just manages to defeat the Thalmor, and in this alternate timeline, the Empire was never as big, and it was far more turbulent with much more internal strife, as well without valuable resources from Morrowind like ebony, glimmer artifacts, and salt rice exports supporting food resources. I propose in this alternate timeline that Titus Mede II is unable to successfully defeat Lord Narafin and dies at the Battle of the Red Ring. It is possible that for the first time in thousands of years that an elven ruler would sit atop the Ruby Throne. If Titus failed, then I would suggest that most of Cyrodiil would be taken, maybe exempting a few of the northern highland territories, such as Coral and the Dural Mountains. And because the Thalmor were successful in taking Cyrodiil, they would be able to refocus their attempts on conquering Hammerfell, which could potentially result in chunks of the southern lands being conquered. But in this different timeline, the Empire would technically live on. Hammerfell would have no reason to secede because no White Gold Concordat was signed. If Titus Mede II has a successor, then perhaps the new Emperor would be forced to rule from Solitude or Wayrest. The battered legions would be forced to the lands of High Rock, Skyrim, and Northern Hammerfell. I imagine the world of Tamriel at the end of the Great War may look a little something like this, but that's the thing. How does the Great War end? Perhaps the new Emperor, in his fear, actually does sign some kind of White Gold Concordat, and Talos worship is outlawed. I mean, I don't think Hammerfell would necessarily blame the Emperor in this situation, because they would not be emboldened by the success of the Battle of the Red Ring. They would not likely believe that they could win. It would be a bit of an all hope lost sort of situation. However, for fun, I like to think that they wouldn't. In this alternate timeline, I like to think the exiled Emperor lives in Solitude and the battered legions fight on against the Thalmor, but the Old Merry Dominion ends the Great War by consolidating the territories it has, including most of Cyrodiil and southern Hammerfell. They are known for playing the long game after all, and the recovery for the Empire looks very unlikely. So let's say the Old Merry Dominion spend the time until Skyrim consolidating their new territories and preparing for another Great War until the year 201 of the 4th Era, where Elder Scrolls V Skyrim takes place. Well, what's interesting is in this alternate timeline, Talos worship is not outlawed. If it's not outlawed, then Ulfric Stormcloak is never arrested after the Markarth incident. In this alternate timeline, Ulfric Stormcloak is a strong supporter of the Empire.
Enemy counter UAV online. Disruptor flash. Watchtower. Beginning launch sequence.
That gave him something to think about. Good work.